Hello and welcome to the PhoneArena.com video review of the AT&T Quickfire presented in HD quality. This is a non-smartphone device running AT&T's proprietary user interface and sports a lot of neat features not found on a typical messaging device. There are some comparisons with T-Mobile's Sidekick lineup, but the biggest thing that the Quickfire has that those don't is the fact that it uses a capacitive touchscreen in the front. At first, there's quite a bit steep learning curve learning how to navigate through the interface here. For example, when scrolling through a long list, you have to actually move your finger in the direction of where you want to scroll. It's kind of different from other touchscreen phones, but after a while you kind of get used to this movement. The other thing about the screen, the one thing we did not like about the screen is the fact that it has poor viewing angles. So when you slightly move the device left to right, it kind of loses the brightness on screen, and the only good time you actually could see is when you're exactly 90 degrees, standing exactly 90 degrees in front of it. The other thing with the Quickfire is that when you slide open the screen left to right, it reveals the full QWERTY keyboard. Now, like we said, this is a messaging device, and the keyboard does an excellent job. Keys are perfectly spaced, not too far apart or close, and they really give you a good feedback, good tactile feel when you actually press down on the button. They're slightly raised from the surface here, and the only place you'll see a navigation keys are right here in the QWERTY itself. There are some applications that require you to use the navigation keys and won't operate with the touchscreen. For example, some of the menus in the AT&T Navigator software. On the left side, you'll have your volume rocker. The other side, you have a camera button and also a voice recognition button. The device did a great job with the software we're using that perfectly understands whatever we say, whether calling someone or dialing a specific phone number. The front has 3 hardware buttons, the send and receive key, with the middle key being the a shortcut key to a list of most used applications here. On the top, you'll find the micro SD card slot conveniently placed. Very easy to access, and it's hot swappable, and also the USB charging port right here. UT Starcom decided to use their own proprietary connection rather than a mini or micro USB. You'll find also the lock or power key right next to it. And the back houses a 1.3 megapixel camera with self-portrait mirror, and on the right side right next to it is the speakerphone. The battery holds the SIM card. When you take it off, you press the latch at the bottom here. As far as design goes, they use a relatively inexpensive plastic material around the entire device. It does make it feel very lightweight, but it has this cheap feel to it. Thickness though, rather thick, but it's quite easily placed in the palm of your hands. We liked how the edges are kind of curved here to give it a soft, very manageable feel. There are some personalization options you can modify with the interface. For example, the home screen here, you could choose to have either the analog clock, digital clock, a world clock, and even a calendar on screen. Icons are perfectly proportioned, well suited for the fingers here. The software itself runs pretty smooth, quite swift, especially when rotating the screen from a portrait view to a landscape view. It's quite instant. There are certain applications, for example, AT&T Navigator, that requires you to use the device in landscape view only, and will only operate in that view, and there's no support for the portrait view. As we stated earlier, the Quickfire is a messaging device at its core, and there are a variety of different applications that work pretty well with the device, from creating text messages to picture messages. Also, the instant messenger application, they provide a useful array of instant messenger clients for you to use here, from Yahoo to Windows Live and even AIM. The great thing about the messaging applications is that it actually will run in the background. So if you do exit out completely and go back to the home screen, you'll still be able to receive messages, and you can log on to multiple providers at once. As far as email goes, unfortunately, just like other non-smartphone devices on AT&T's lineup, it doesn't provide you, specific mail clients to use. If your own email client's not on here, unfortunately, there's no way for you to manually put in your own provider. So you're strictly, limited to the options provided with the device. Now, the Quickfire uses the Polaris 6.0 browser, which we found to be somewhat a different experience when compared to others. Now, the biggest thing that we told you earlier is the fact that scrolling with the capacitive screen is a little bit different on the Quickfire. If you want to navigate to on the screen, you got to move your finger in the direction you want to. So if you want to move up on the page, you got to flick towards the up instead of a more traditional way that you're used to on an iPhone. It's kind of laggy, unfortunately. It's kind of jerky at times too, but the text comes out pretty well, quite legible here. Mobile sites loaded up really quick with no slowdown, but larger complex sites just like ours here, it does take quite some time. The device also supports YouTube videos, runs its own video player when you go to the website, but we found the web browser to be a somewhat decent experience, although it's not as full-featured as some others compared to like the iPhone browser or even Opera. We were quite pleased with the backlighting on the QWERTY keyboard, especially in complete darkness. They're quite very easy to actually see in the dark. Also in daylight, the contrast of the silver keys make it really easy to see, but we didn't have any problems using the keyboard in either daylight or nighttime here. Now, the Quickfire does play videos. Unfortunately, though, the playback is sometimes choppy, a little bit of lag also. Sound quality on the device itself does not seem to have enough power to provide ample viewing with a video, but it does a good job when playing music here. As we said before, the Quickfire does suffer from poor viewing angles, so when you slightly move it left or right, you definitely lose clarity on the screen. So the only time you could actually view it is viewing it at a 90-degree angle. But when you do tilt the phone the other way, portrait view, you'd also get the same problems, with it. Overall, we were pleased with the performance of the Quickfire as being a messaging device here. The inclusion of the touchscreen does add some great features, but we wish that it was implemented a little bit more into the software. In terms of the full QWERTY keyboard, it gives it a very good feel for the user, quite easy to manage, and again, as we said, spaced out evenly, probably the best thing about the phone. In terms of the camera, unfortunately, though, images were less than mediocre. Some images were quite blurry and also seemed pixelated, especially in low-lit areas. But again, the Quickfire is aimed towards text messengers, the messaging-happy consumers out there, and does a good job of doing just that.